What's up guys, my name's Liam, and today I'm going to be doing a full long-term in-depth review of the TJ Exclusives Cerapad. This is the original version. I've had this a little over a year now, so could this be the perfect hard pad for you? Let's check it out. Alright guys, and here we have the TJ Exclusives original Cerapad. This is the Iridium version. This comes in various different sizes. This one in particular comes in at 505 millimeters in width and 405 millimeters in length. They do have a bigger version of this pad. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but it is actually 605 millimeters in width, but it is also the same 405 millimeters in height. So when it comes to the overall construction of the pad, this sits at about 4 millimeters in thickness without the feet, and sitting this next to the Pulsar Super Glide glass pad and the Razor Atlas, they sit about the same level, not too much of a difference. As far as the edges go, it does have beveled edges, and when it comes to the overall comfort of using this pad, I have not had any issues. As far as the actual size of the Iridium version goes, it's about the same size as an Artisan pad, just slightly bigger there as far as width goes and a little shorter on the height. But overall, it's a really similar experience to using an Artisan pad, for example. And I've never come across any issues with this pad, like I said, with it feeling uncomfortable to me, with me having an issue with the size or anything like that personally. When it comes to the overall build of this pad and the backing of it, this is honestly one of the most solid hard pads that I've ever owned. As you can see here, the backing is a carbon fiber back. It's got the 4 feet on the corners, and they've kind of moved around on me a lot just because I've used this pad so much. There's been times where I've used it as a base and I've put in other soft pads on top of it that I've been testing it out. So I've definitely put this pad through its paces. And even though the feet have slightly shifted on the back, there has not been any issues with it bothering me or hindering the performance of the pad. And when it comes to the center side of the pads, when you do push down on it, you do see some flex on the pad. No matter how much weight I put on it, how much I use it, I have never once noticed an issue with it bending or flexing in the middle or anything like that that's bothered me or hindered me in my gameplay in any way, shape, or form. And when it comes down to the build of the rest of this pad, this is actually a tempered glass core, but the surface of this hard pad has a ceramic coating on top. Now, as far as the overall endurance of the surface of this pad being, I know a lot of people get freaked out when they hear that any type of a surface is coated, because in the past, generally, anytime you do have a coated surface, it tends to wear down over time, get beat up, be inconsistent, anything like that. And I will say, for whatever reason, I have intentionally tried pushing this pad. Since it does have a ceramic surface on it, I want to try out different things that you can't try on just regular glass pads because the surface of them is so sensitive. And I am truly shocked to say, as I sit here a year later, no matter what I've done to this pad, no matter what I've thrown at it, my copy still performs flawlessly. Now, I've actually personally reached out to TJ myself, and I asked him if it was okay to use sapphire skates on this pad or even glass skates. And I want to be clear with you guys, it is not recommended to use glass skates on this pad, and it is not recommended to use sapphire or any other type of hard type of skates on the surface if you're looking to get the most out of it and if you are looking to extend the life as long as possible on it. However, I want to tell you, with that being said, I do know people that do use glass skates on this pad. I have personally used glass skates on this pad a lot, and I have tried messing around with the sapphire skates a lot. And again, I'm not suggesting that you should do it, but what I've come to find is this surface still performs flawlessly. I haven't noticed any issues with it, even though I have scratched the surface, even though I've used hard skates on this surface. Now, do bear in mind, when I do play, I am mostly a wrist aimer. I'm not constantly using my forearm to go crazy all over the pad or anything like that, so perhaps that could have a different effect. However, everything that I have thrown at this pad, when I go side to side, when I go in the middle, I mostly game right here in the center, in this area right here. It feels completely consistent across the board. I don't notice any type of issues at all to where it feels slower in the middle, faster on the sides, anything like that. And as far as I can remember, this pad still feels as good and as solid and performs as equally as it did when I first picked it up. And what I can tell you guys is almost every cloth pad that I get after a year, it starts to degrade, wear out, or not perform as consistently or equally in the middle portion as it does compared to the sides. So with my experience, if you were to get this pad, you'd take great care of it and just use PTFE feet on it. I don't see how this pad could not last you for just about ever. One of the things I have noticed about using this pad consistently is, you're gonna have the issue just as similarly as you would with glass mouse pads, to where the surface does get dirty and it does kind of get your feet dirty. I do find myself having to constantly wipe off the pad, and even at times I have to wipe off my skates as well. Another thing about the surface of this pad is, it's a little bit on the louder side. One of the most recent glass pads that I tested was the Atlas, and that was one of the most quiet pads out of all the other ones that I've used. This surface is more quiet than the Atlas. So let's go ahead and check it out, and I'll drop a sound test for you guys really quick. And then when it comes to the final thing of the surface of the TJ exclusive Cerapad, this surface is pretty sticky, and it is actually really sticky on the skin. If you do live in any type of a hot climate or any type of a climate with humidity, your forearm will stick to this pad like crazy. And out of all the things that I have mentioned to you, that's probably really one of the only hard things to get used to with this pad, is the fact that if you're going to consistently be using this pad, you're going to be using it a lot. You do have to wear a sleeve with this pad for it to perform consistently for your gameplay. And when it comes to the actual performance of the surface of this pad, this is by far my favorite hard pad surface that I've ever tested before. When it comes to the static friction of this mouse pad, you don't necessarily get that floaty effect like you do on glass. And there is real low initial static friction once you get moving, but it's not like there's a sense of you losing control or anything like that, in my opinion. And then once you do begin gliding on this pad, this absolutely feels like a speed pad, but I feel like you get so much control while you're gliding across this pad. When it comes to using glass pads, even something like the Razer Atlas, where I feel like the surface is a bit scratchier and does give you a bit more control over the other offerings, I still feel personally like the Razer Atlas has that kind of floaty glass feeling to it when you're moving your mouse across it and when you're trying to stop on it. Whereas the surface on this pad is still very fast, but it still has really good stopping characteristics. When it comes to using different mice and different mice feet, the performance of this pad is a bit more impacted by the types of skates that you use compared to other glass pads out there. When I have used the Sapphire, the glass skates on here, I do feel like you get the quickest glide by far, but the thing that's kind of weird about it is, you know, you still do get the control with it. So it is a really addicting feeling for me when I was using the Sapphire skates on this pad. Again, not highly recommended, but the feeling overall is very fast and you still have some control. And then next up on this pad, I do feel like core pad skates work really quickly on here. As you can see here, I got the Razer Viper Mini core pads. And overall with these skates, I do feel like this mouse has a faster glide, and I do feel like it has a little bit less stopping power over the other types of skates that I've tried using. And when it comes to two of my favorite mice that I like using on this pad, the Razer Viper Mini Signature Edition, these are just the stock skates that I have here on this mouse. And I don't know what it is, but I feel like these feet perform flawlessly on this pad. As you can see here, when I push this mouse around with these feet, it just has a really controlled glide and it still has great overall stopping power. And then another option here is just the stock skates on the Atlantis Mini. This is the mouse I use constantly. I've used it a lot on this pad. They do feel a little slower than the skates that are on the Razer Viper Mini Signature Edition. And I'll try and see here if I can kind of show you guys what I'm talking about. So as you can see there, the Razer Viper Mini just kind of glides a little bit further and goes farther. But I feel like these skates perform flawlessly on here and they have great stopping power. And then obviously, if you're going to be using a mouse like the G Pro Superlight or any other type of mouse that has bigger skates on it, you do get a bit more control with the bigger skates, and overall you get a little bit of a slower glide. So to better demonstrate to you guys why I do prefer the overall performance of the surface of the TJ exclusive Cerapad, here we have it up against the Razer Atlas. I can feel like when I'm making my small micro adjustments, it just kind of sticks a little bit better to the pad, and I feel like I have a little bit more control. Whereas when I'm doing flicks or trying to do stops on the glass mouse pad, it just feels a little more floaty. And when it comes to the overall speed of these pads, I feel like they are pretty similar. I feel like the Razer Atlas can be a little bit slower than the Cerapad in some occasions, or vice versa, depending on the type of mice and skates that you're using on these pads. So I'll go ahead and drop a speed test on both of these pads so you can kind of see how they perform pretty similar to one another. All right, and then next up, I'm going to throw up one of my favorite soft pads. This is a speed pad, the Artisan FX Raiden in the xSoft version. So when it comes to comparing both of these pads, I do feel like the overall speed is similar on both of them. However, when it comes to the Cerapad, I do feel like there's a little bit less initial friction when you start moving the mouse on this pad. On the Raiden, when you're going from a dead stop, especially if you're putting any type of pressure on the mouse, it can feel just a slight bit more muddier when you go to take off. But overall, when it comes to the glide and the stopping power on both these pads, you know, this one does obviously perform more like a hard pad. This one performs more like a soft pad, where you do have more stopping power on this if you push into the pad. And let's go ahead and demonstrate that by a glide test. So overall, the TJ exclusive Cerapad does have just a slight bit quicker and smoother glide as compared to the Artisan Raiden, but overall the characteristics of them are fairly similar. All right guys, so that wraps things up here on the TJ exclusive Cerapad. Again, I can't stress to you guys enough how much I truly love this pad. I've used it a lot. I feel like it performs great. And when it comes down to gameplay for me, if I'm using something like the Raiden or the Lamzu Energon, and I feel like my flicks are just coming up a little bit short, I'm not playing as quickly as I could, I'll always jump over to this pad, and it honestly really impresses me, especially when you're up close, you're doing the really fast tracking, you're doing the 360 flick shots, you know, if you're battling with somebody, they jump over you or anything like that. It always amazes me with this pad how much easier it is just to stick with somebody through the whole tracking process. And once I got really dialed into this pad and really used to this pad, I am really impressed with how it has all the characteristics and performs like a speed hard pad, but you just feel like you get that little extra control as compared to anything else, especially when it comes down to small movements, the micro adjustments, or trying to get your shot exactly where you want it to be. All right guys, so if you have any questions or you feel like there's anything I left out, please let me know down in the comments below. And if you are interested in seeing more videos like this in the future, please subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the next one.